Hello, welcome to Building SaaS with Python and Django. My name is Matt Lehman. I am the streamer for the stream, and we work on a Django application, and it is one that is a side project of mine. And tonight we're going to continue on some onboarding work that I've been doing to start new members as they sign up with the app. And so let's jump into it. Before we do that, I will point out that if you want to get in touch with me offline or online, but off stream, I guess I should say, there are a bunch of ways to do that. I have a Twitter handle of MBLehman. There's a website at mattlehman.com where you can sign up for a mailing list if you so choose. And I post a bunch of Python and Django related content there. And yeah, there are other ways to get in touch with me as well. There's also a Discord that you can find down below if you have questions that are too big for Twitter, but don't need to be like so one-on-one and are good for group contexts. I also have a Patreon at patreon.com/mblehman. If you find what I do valuable and want to throw a few dollars my way, I'd be really grateful. So I'm also grateful for the patrons that I have. Mark, Rob, Patrick, thank you for contributing. So let's look at the project that we're working on and get back into this flow of onboarding. In previous episodes of this stream, we have been working on improving the onboarding process for my app. I'm building a homeschool application that will be used by my family, and ultimately I want to make that available to other users. So I'm working through the steps of what does someone do when they sign up for the first time. So let's bring up the app and so you can see what it looks like from the start of this onboarding flow. And it looks like I have not logged in, so let me do that. What is a good email? It's testing at somewhere.com, I think. We'll find out if I got that right. So we'll see, we should see the onboarding flow. Yeah, there it is. Okay. So this is going to be the starting experience that people have when they get on the application. There's going to be a progression that will guide people to add the necessary data for building their homeschool curriculum. So the way a homeschool website works, or at least the one I'm planning to build, is it's going to require a lot of data input. And that is perhaps overwhelming. So to avoid attrition from people who sign up and just say, I have no idea what I'm doing, I want to basically guide them through the process of setting up the key elements that are needed to set up their school. And once they have those key elements in place, I'm hoping they will feel equipped enough to flesh out their entire curriculum for whatever students they have in their home. So we've been walking through this process where the first time we did this stream, we set up this page right here, which is sort of the welcome message of it's the very first thing that they see. It's a letter personalized from me and says, hey, look, this is all about making homeschool something that is friendly. And I'm right there with you because we do this in my family as well. So I am looking to make this as good for my family as possible, and I hope to share that with others. That's the idea behind this message. So then we want to guide the user along the path of inserting the data into the system. And I think I have a diagram that I can quickly show off of some of the models that are in this. So we have a Django application, and there are a bunch of models. Oh, I even have it modified from the last time that we tried this. There are a bunch of models that need to be part of this onboarding process. And I know that's super tiny, so we're going to zoom in here and to get a refresher. When a user signs up on their site for the first time, they get a user record created for them from the Django model, Django auth system. That's the default sign-up process that is part of it. But I also do a step to auto-create a school for them. The school is going to be the container for all of their stuff for this application. And that is automatically created. They don't need to do anything from the get-go with that because there's no data that initially is associated with the school. All it has, I don't know if you can, it still might be small. All it has in it is its primary key ID and a foreign key to themselves. This admin right here is a representation of the user record that was created when they signed up. So that is all a school currently contains. There might be a future where we give it a name or some other attributes, but for today, with this minimal app in place, that's what we need. But to start populating the data that they need for the school year, we are going to add some other kinds of records. And the first one that's going to be needed is an actual school year record itself. The school year is going to contain everything that applies to the set of students that live in that household for the year. It will be the parent level container. Well, I guess technically the school is the top of the tree. And then a school year or multiple school years eventually, if people stay on year after year, will be underneath that. And underneath the school year will be a grade level, and then courses, and then work for those courses, and so on. We're not going to get that deep in the tree today. We're basically at the starting point of this. And so today, what I want to do on this application is to build out the form that provides the minimal amount of data that is needed to make a school year work. And what is needed is the start date of the school year and the end date of the school year. We already will have the school foreign key. We can look that up because it's auto-created. And so we should be able to just ask for the 2 dates in this form. And we might need to do some validation to make sure that the sequence makes sense. Like you don't want the end date before the start date, for instance. But a minimal amount of validation, check that it's a couple of valid dates, and then move them on to the next step. So that's the plan. Hopefully that makes sense. If you have any questions, I do have a chat available. Feel free to ask your questions. And maybe they're not about this application. Maybe they're just general Python, Django, web development questions. That's fine. A lot of why I'm here is to show you an application in the real world, like a real app that I'm really planning to use with my family and ultimately others, like I said. But I also recognize that I'm here to share with you what I know and here to teach when I can. So if something pops up that you're like, well, I don't get that, or something totally different that you have a question about, as long as it's within the realm of reason related to Python and Django, please, I'd be happy to try and answer that. So let's take a look at the next page in the flow so you can see where we were last time. I kind of mentioned that along this process, I want to add a little bit of life to each of these steps. And to mix it up a little bit, I'm going to plan to alternate imagery between this 2-column approach that's here. So even though this first image shows this mother and child, preparing to send them off to school, which is kind of ironic because it's a homeschool app, but the idea of a connection between a mother and child, I'm going to switch it to the other side. So let's click on so you can see what I'm talking about. So last time we connected the next view, but we didn't actually flesh out the view. So it's got some placeholder stuff in it still, which you'll see in just a moment. So I did find an image that I want to use for this. I chose something that is time related, since we're picking a school year and the school year is caring about the start and end date. That seemed thematically connected to me. What is here is just the copy. I never cleaned it out. So this is what we're going to do, where we're going to start. We're going to insert the form that's needed, mock it out, and then we will add to the view that backs behind it to actually handle the form logic. That's my plan. So let's bring up the code, and you don't need to look at my vimRC. I was doing that for something totally different this past weekend. Where do we need to go? It's a good question. I guess we should go to the template where that stuff lives. And that should be defined under core start school year. All of these templates are going to be prefixed by start just because that's the style that I chose. And here you can see the placeholders that are there. So I think maybe what I'll do, well, for the moment, I'll just comment them out. We'll delete them in a minute, but I just want to see it totally empty. This is the panel we're going to fill in over on this side. And we can borrow from another form on the site because I want to have the forms ultimately have a similar look and feel. And we need to see one of those in action to understand what that style is. So where can we see an example of that? Let's go into one of these, and here we go. Here's the style of form that I want to include for most forms on the site, excuse me. It's going to be something where the name of the form field is listed on the left side of the form, and then the box, whatever it is appropriate, will be on the right side, and then there'll be a button that will be in line with the right side element on that left edge. Hopefully that makes sense. So I think what I'm going to do is completely copy this form markup that's here and drop it in to the school year place and see how it looks. So I know that this is the course add task template or something to that effect. We're going to search for templates, course, and it should be the course task form. That's what it is. So this form will be everything within this chunk here. I'm going to yank all of that text and put it, nope, that wasn't right. Put it there. Okay. And we'll reformat that stuff so that it all lines up nicely as HTML tags properly indented. Although I think that Vim kind of mangled some of that stuff, but that's okay. We'll clean up as we need to. So if we go back to the start page that we were on, should be here. Ooh, I just noticed something as well. We have a default, well, I don't think you can actually see my tabs at the top. So I'll drop this down for a second. We have a default tab title here. So that is not very informative. We need to create more meaningful tabs. And I'm sure it's going to be true of this start page as well. So let's go ahead and, before we get back to the form, add the title stuff that's missing. And I think the title is this head title block. So let's close that task form. And right now we are in the start school year form. So we're going to paste the one that's there and take everything in here. And we'll I think, use the same text that is in this bar, this navigation bar, this banner. So I'm going to say start your school year as the title. Start your school year. And if I refresh this, come to this page, whoops. Oh, I see. Okay. We'll come back to this, I guess, in a minute, because there's some stuff that's looking for template stuff that doesn't exist yet. But I want to see that this title thing is correct. So now if we show it off again, there it is. You see start your school year. And let's also fix, while we're at it, the other start template. Oops, let's copy from the one we just used. And come over to this other one, paste in the head title, and it said, what did it say? I think it said like, welcome to homeschool app. I've not picked a name for this project yet. So I'm working with the incredibly generic name of homeschool app. I will continue to use that name and hope that my find and replace skills later on will be good. But that's what it is for now. When it does finally come time to brand, I guess that's the right word, then I will replace all of these homeschool apps. I'll probably spend a little bit of money at some point to actually pay for a logo design. I don't know what that would be yet. I need to pick a domain name. There's all sorts of things that go along with naming this. And frankly, I'm just not ready to do that. So my plan is to get this homeschool application in good enough shape that my wife is ready to use it as the first customer. And I've got it up on Heroku, and she doesn't mind using the kind of nasty generated name that comes from Heroku. Actually, it's named something that's kind of pleasant, Sleepy Caverns. It's, something unusual, but we're going to go with that for now. And then when I do figure out what I want to name the thing and what I want to brand the thing, I'll do all the work to start that branding, set up the domain, and it won't change the actual Heroku site. It'll just point to a new domain at some point. But that, again, is like a way down the road kind of the problem. And it's something that I learned from my last project. My last project was ambitious, but I also approached it wrong, I think. I didn't focus on what was needed to actually make something useful. Instead, I was focused on the periphery, the things like domain names and monitoring services and all of these other things that for a long-term running project you want to be successful, but are just not necessary when you're trying to build something that actually does something useful. So I've been really focused with this application to build the core thing, which is nearly there for her point of view, and I've done on other streams. If you want to go back and check them out, they're on YouTube. So I'm trying to take the right approach of doing the minimal amount to make something useful, and then expand out as it proves to actually be a useful tool that people will really use. So coming back to the start page, now we have the right title, Welcome to Homeschool App. And we'll change that branding at some point in the future. Okay, so that's enough looking at those tabs. There's nothing else really to do that on that portion. We can come back to the form work, I think. And that form was failing. I wonder if this will still work. Oh, good, it does. So let's uncomment the form and then find the part that was failing. I think it was a URL lookup down here, if I'm correct. Yeah, it's probably this guy right here. So for the moment, we're going to view that around that tag and comment that out and see if that will cause the page to load. Cool. We didn't really need that button anyway. It was a delete button, which isn't going to be relevant for this stuff. So we could probably just go ahead and delete it. In fact, let's do that. Let's delete that. And let's also delete the placeholder stuff that we had below, because we're not going to need that either. And then we can start focusing on what else we need. So this is a text area, but we don't need a text area for a start time. We probably just need a standard input tag. But I don't actually know yet. So perhaps I can guess that we're going to need a standard input tag, but it might actually be a different type depending on the type that we use. Because the type of field that we need for a Django form is going to dictate what is expected on the HTML side. So notionally, I'm going to fix this up to have the right form fields, but it's going to be a guess. We'll get it to look right, and then we'll kind of backfill to what the thing should actually be. But one thing I know for certain is we don't need a text area. So actually, I think what I want to do is copy this duration field as both the start date and the end date, and then also get rid of this is graded checkbox because that's not needed either, and we can update the button to be something appropriate. So let's find each of these elements, and here's the first one. We're going to delete the description, and we're going to delete is graded, and that should give us a very simple form so far. And we're going to change duration to be start date in both of those spots. And we'll call it there as well, and go through and fix all of them. Okay. And that's good for the moment. And let's change the duration label to start date. And the other thing I thought about this is we kind of want a little bit of an explainer. I can't just present a form. Well, I could. It would be not a very friendly user experience if all I did was say, here's your form, but I didn't give any context of why are you providing these dates fields. I think people could probably figure it out, but it is a nice help to give some context and say, hey, your school year needs to be bounded, and this is, you can pick something in the future, that's okay. The things that people are going to think about when they're selecting this stuff. So we've got a start date, and I'm going to copy this basically. So we'll come down to here, and now we've got, should have two start date fields. They're both number fields at this moment, which is why they've got a little up and down thing that are, I don't know what's doing that, if it's either the Mac number field or if it's coming from Tailwind. That is a horribly unfriendly little number clicker, but I will clean that up later. And again, these are date fields, so that doesn't mean anything for this context. So we're going to change that input type in a little while, but not yet. So let's change this to end date. And anytime we've got start here, we'll do end. And there was one more up there. Okay. So that gets us to having a form that's starting to look right, like it's in the right shape. Update doesn't make any sense as a button label. Let's come down to here, and you can see that it's coming into this if-else branch, which we don't need. So we'll delete this stuff from the everything in the if create part doesn't apply. So we're left with this side of it, and we have a button here, and I know that there's not a next URL on this flow, so we're going to get rid of that. And we don't need a flex grow because the flex grow was for the delete button that was there. So all of that stuff can go away too. I'm basically just chopping out everything that is not relevant, and it should just be left with the same. It should look the same, but there's a lot less markup backing it up. And what is a good label for this? Probably something like create my school, create my school year. I don't really know. This is something that eventually I'll want to talk to actual users and say, like, hey, does this page make sense to you? I can guide them through the flow of the data that I need because of how I've modeled this site. But if it's the actual right language or not, if it resonates with them, is something that I can only do my best to guess on. And somebody could come back and say, hey, if you called it this other thing, it would be so much more clear to me. And I'll take that to heart later. But I need something here for now. So I'm going to use create my school year. And maybe I don't want to be that possessive. Let's just do create school year. That way, it's very clear of what the action is. It is also descriptive enough to describe the event that's trying to happen. And yeah, it doesn't feel like overly personalized. I don't want it to feel too sugary, I guess. I'm going to do one more thing here, and that is to take, what do I need to do? I need a new, I need a new row. And the row is going to be where we're going to put the descriptive paragraph that doesn't exist yet. So let's put that in here. And I forgot about this thing existed, but there is a built-in template tag called Ipsum that, if this works the way I think it works, we'll put in some, whoops. Oh, Ipsum has an end block. Okay. That wasn't quite the dramatic arrival of Ipsum that I thought it would be. Django built-in template tags. What we want to go to and see how it's used. I used it wrong, but it is the right thing that we can use. Oh, it's not called Ipsum, it's called Lorem. Ah. Oops. So change it to Lorem is what we really wanted. Which makes so much more sense than Ipsum. It's Lorem Ipsum is the phrase. So I don't know why I thought it would be the second word. Whoa! That did not do what I expected it to do. So, what did we do? Oh, I foolishly put this in the middle of the form. It needs to go above the form. So it needs to come up into this container, and I don't need to have it in a flex container. I think that should be sufficient. And let's go ahead and style it a little bit. We need a class of, what should I do with this? Oh, what is going on here? I did something weird. Okay, I'm going to delete this for just a moment and see what happens if it comes back. No, I messed something up. Let's just back up. Okay. Let's try. Okay. I don't know what I did. Thankfully, undo is a thing that we can use. Try this again. So we're going to have a class, and let's give it some margin for our paragraph. And for the moment, let's say margin bottom of 4. And we'll provide our Lorem tag, not Ipsum tag. Maybe because my brain internally says like Lorem Ipsum, and it's just like it's the last word, so naturally I want to say the Ipsum one. I don't know. Super weird. Okay. That did that actually add padding? What's going on here? Oh, it did. It's just really small. So the padding, let's look at the padding between elements here and see if that is more meaningful. There's an MB6 that's separating the different elements in the form. Let's use that between the paragraph and the form itself. That should add some uniformity between these things. And okay. The Lorem Ipsum is pretty crappy at like getting a feel for the actual thing, but it does at least block in what the text looks like. I'm trying to remember if I changed the text over here. The text is just no, it's not centered. But it uses font light with a text blue 900. Am I still using that? Okay, I am. It's wrapped up in this div above it. So the text at least looks the same between the two, which is good. So we'll want some kind of something there, but this is, I think, okay for now. And I think the other fact that I like about this is we can see how it pushes the form down. So the form is very simple in what it's asking for. It'll ask for 2 things. It'll probably need some kind of little help or a placeholder to show the format that's going to be needed, because it's going to be a date field, and Django expects date fields in a certain way, I'm pretty sure. But we'll get to that in a moment. Okay, what's the next step then? I think the next step is to change the type of form, or excuse me, change the type of view that we have. let's look at where this view is defined. It's in core views, I believe. Core views. Currently, it is only a template view. Template is here. It's the start school year. It has a login required mixin, which means that you must be a logged in user in order to see it, but it has no associated form yet. The form is Django's way of receiving data from a user and handling that data, validating it, and giving you a good standard way of reporting back errors if they were to occur. And it's just a very common pattern for when you're working with HTML forms. We're using class-based views here. So there are different class-based views that we can apply that will help us in this process. And we can probably use the form view, but I need to check. There might be a more specialized view that's more appropriate for this, but I'm not positive yet. So what can we do? There's a website, Django class-based views. Yeah, this is it. The class-based view system, while powerful, is also simultaneously a little bit confusing sometimes because there's so many options. And it's hard to know what the class-based views, they're a collection of mixins, and you don't always know which one they are. So I'm going to look at one of these generic edit mixins, or wow, let me try again. Generic edit views, and see which one will apply. This one that's listed here as form view is the most generic of these, and then the create, delete, and update views are specific purposes below that. So we either want to use a form view or a create view. The create view could be for a school year. That's probably sounding like it's the right fit, but I still want to make sure that we're doing this appropriately. So we're looking at the form view first, and we can see all of the ancestors that it comes from. It has this template response mixin. I think that's the same thing that's used by template view, so that we can have, yep, here's template name. Oh, good. Look at this thing. This site's amazing. Props to whoever made this, because here's the template name thing that we already have in our template view right here at this bottom line. And we can see where that thing came from, defined in the template response mixin. We can also see that there's a bunch of form stuff. You can set a form class. You can set all of the things that we're going to need to make this form successful. The pattern that this thing is going to use is it will receive the form data, try and validate it, and then if it's valid, it will call form valid. If it's not valid, it will call form invalid. That's the general pattern of the form view. Okay, so that's one option. Let's look at the other one and see if it's a better fit. This is the create view. Okay. The create view is still a template response mixin, so it's still going to work with our template, but it also works with these other things to specify the thing that we want to create. So in this context, we're going to want to create a school year. That school year has to be connected to the particular school for the user. So that's something else that we need to consider. And I think this is going to be the right thing, but we're going to need to be careful with all the fields that we have to provide. So I'm going to go down this path of using a create view, and we'll kind of run into the errors that are going to happen along the way. Because as soon as we switch over from template view to create view and try and reload the page, it's going to blow up in our face. And you'll see that. So let's go to the top and make sure that we have the create view accessible to us. That is available in Django views generic. So, whoops, from Django views generic import create view. Okay, this thing confuses me here. One of these is from base, and one of these is from just the generic package. I don't know if Django is re-exporting stuff in generic. Let's go check it out. And I'm going to go to Django. Oh, we're already in Django. And then views. And here's generic. And you can see there's a bunch of files here. So it's create view. The only place that it could be coming from is defined in the init.py. Okay. So what this thing is doing is it's re-exporting all of these things up into a top level namespace. So you can, instead of using the pattern that I've done here of generic base, we could instead do this. I kind of like that a little bit more because you don't need to know the specific module that a view came from. It instead becomes all your generic views are in the generic package. That's kind of nice. We've got the create view itself came from edit, because this is what I struggle with. Like, I never remember, did it come from base? Did it come from detail? Did it come from edit? And if I can just help myself remember that it's always in generic only, then I'll save myself a bunch of trouble. Okay. We're going to come down to the bottom, and we're going to change the template view to a create view. We're going to do some error-driven development. All right. So now it's saying start school year view is missing a query set. So we can either define a model, define a query set, or override get query set. Now, let me just pause and ask which is the right way to do this. If we use the model option, the model option is when you're like giving the most control to Django. So in that world, you're assuming that any valid instance of that is appropriate. I think that's not going to be the right choice for this context, because I want to make sure that it's not possible for someone to create a school year for someone else's school. So we need to make sure that our query set to get the right school year, or to get on the right school year, appropriately filters down to the school that this user is associated with. And that also means that query set of the class level value is not right either. And the reason for that is because query set can only be defined as a class level attribute. So I can't just say something like school year.objects.filter school user.school. That's not going to work, because at this time when the module is loaded, there's no access to a user object, so it doesn't make any sense. So that only leaves us with the get query set option. So we're going to define get query set, and because we've got the login required mix-in, we know that the user is attached to this request and they are already authenticated. That is a precondition that I'm just trusting that the login required mix-in is enforcing. So I can say user is self request user and know that that is the real user who's logged in, not an anonymous user. And that user has extra attributes that are available. So we're not doing anything with it yet, but we can look at the user's model and see what's available. I have this cached property on here. This cached property is going to be important because, well, let me think through this now. The query set for school year, so this is for create. Why do we need to filter on that school year, or that school? Because there's no school year record yet. So as part of the form cleaning, so all right, I'm not making a lot of sense. Let me back up. There are 3 pieces that's needed in order to create a school year record: the school, a start date, and the end date. That's it. We need to validate that the school is the same school that is associated with the user. That does not need to be done by the query set, though. That can be done during the form cleaning process. That's a validation step that we should take to guarantee the security of the school year only being associated with the school of that user. Otherwise, if we didn't validate that, somebody who was very clever with a certain post request could conceivably submit a post request that creates a school year for someone else's school, which is wrong. So now I'm kind of doubling back because I don't think get query set is actually what's going to be helping us here. So I'm going to rethink this. Let's try and do the simplest thing, and that would be to set the model of school year. Is that going to be right? I think that this approach might be making a form for us. We're expecting, yeah. So we have this other option here to specify a form class. I don't know what will happen if we only specify the model and don't specify the form. Maybe Django is using a default one. I can't remember. That's the other challenge with the class-based view system, is the interactions between the class-based views are not always obvious. And I don't work with them often enough to remember them all. So I'm going to refresh this. Okay, using model form mixin without the field attributes is prohibited. All right. Let's dig into this more. Okay, this website, although great for showing all the extra stuff, does not show the documentation. Now it's time to look at the Django docs. We want to find Django create view. So I think we need to provide the fields that are expected by this form. And that's going to be our start date and our end date, because that's part of the school year. Look at that model. Schools, models. Here's the start date and the end date. They're 2 date fields. And here's the school foreign key. So essentially we need to ask our form to validate on those 2 data attributes. And then when it comes time to like saving, we need to also inject the school from the user. So I think what we want is just those 2 fields. It's going to be a list, and we'll say start date and end date. And I'm going to come back through when I'm all done and test this appropriately. Like there's kind of flying by the seat of my pants right now, which is okay because these are very well tested chunks of reusable code. So we want to kind of just see if they hang together. And then I want to test the specific business logic that I'm trying to apply for my application. All right, so that caused it to load, but yeah, I don't know. I bet if we tried to hit post, oh, okay, there's HTML5 validation. All right, that's a good start. Now we have more available to us, and let's take a look at what else is available. I'm going to turn on, can I turn this on without revealing stuff? Don't think I can. I have to switch my settings. I'm going to hide this for just a second. I'm going to turn on the Debug Toolbar, and it's in my environment file, and that file has some secrets in it, so I can't show that, which is unfortunate. But all I did was uncomment an environment variable. Now you should be able to see everything. If you can't, holler in the chat and let me know. So if I start this up again, come back to the page, refresh, the difference is now we have the debug toolbar available. And I've taken to turning this off most of the time because there does seem it to be, for some reason, a very massive performance hit when I use it. What I want to look at is the context that's available. We switch to a create view, so there now should be a form in here. It is, and it is. It is a school year form. It is not bound because we have not submitted any data. And it has two fields that it expects, start date and end date. If we come into the template, we can say, where did the template go? That's important. Let's come into this Lorem area. We're going to add a little bit here. We're going to say form as P. What this will do is when we re-render, we can't really see them because Tailwind is not playing nicely with the formatting, but the input elements are hiding here. So we can see that the input is a standard input with a text type, and required is empty. That's not true. We actually need this to be required. So we might have to provide a form class in order to make this more specific. I can't recall, honestly, if you need a form class to inform what this view is going to use, if then you need all fields as well. It seems like those would be in conflict with each other because the form class should dictate what fields are expected. But what I wanted to show here is that there should be at least two, well, where'd they go? Here's the start date. Ah, okay, this is the next paragraph tag. And here's the end date. These are the two fields that are expected on our form right now. So that's enough to help let's go change our form to what's these number fields to a text type, and then try it out, see what happens. It should fail, but we'll find out. Let's close these other things for the moment so we can see all of the template. And we're going to come down to the input and change the type here to be text. And oh, okay. So when it was doing required equal empty string, that probably was signifying that it is a required field. I forgot that the required HTML5 attribute is just an empty attribute of required. And so probably what's happening is that's just Django's way of saying, here's how we can add the required attribute. We don't need this autocomplete thing. That was a hack that was needed to get around something that was going wrong with the number field type not validating properly. And yeah, I think that's right for that one. We're going to change number here to text. We'll delete the min, and we'll delete the same autocomplete that we don't need. If we refresh, now we've got this. And frankly, I do want to add something here. I like helping people out with where they start on the form. If I'm asking you that's something that's mandatory to fill out, I might as well put you on the first thing that I expect you to fill out, which is this first field. So we're putting the focus on there, and we haven't done the placeholder yet. So we'll see that in a second. So now this is an empty thing. We'll hit create school year. Okay, it is saying it's required. And I put in just some junk data here and try and hit submit. You didn't see anything. The page flashed, but I'm sure we're in an error state now. So let's come over to the context. Check it out. Okay. So let's compare the difference. So what does bound and unbound mean, or bound with a value of true versus false? A bound value with false is when a form has not received any data yet. It is a new form. It's not bound to data. That's sort of what the bound attribute means. So that's just the empty state of the form. And when that form gets rendered, there's no values, there's nothing to display. In contrast, we have this example here where now we have a bound form. We posted to the site, and the create view did a reload of the page, except this time it has a form with data in it. And the important part is that the data was not valid. Okay. And they're still the same fields attribute. What we can't see in here is that there are form errors. So because the data is not valid, I know that form errors do exist. And let's just quickly see them by adding to this well, let's just do a new paragraph tag for the moment. Doesn't really matter. We'll say form errors. And I think it's going to be a list, but it doesn't really matter. I think this will appropriately just dump them all out. Now let's submit again. And this time, hopefully there's yeah. So what's happening here is when we are putting out this errors thing, Django is trying to render some HTML to be helpful. It is, unfortunately, for the way I'm doing Tailwind, not a super useful chunk of HTML. It doesn't have the styling that I want, so I need to extract those out myself. So we need to check for the errors manually and add that into the styling of the form below. And you can see what I was complaining about. I didn't enter a valid date. Now let's change this so it is a valid date. Let's change it to today, which is the 4th of April. Or excuse me, it's April 8th. Sorry about that. So now you can see that the errors list has dropped to just one being not valid. And let's change it so that the end of the school year will be 12/31, just for the sake of it. This should still fail because we're missing a school. And that's going to be a constraint on the database that is not satisfied. What we're seeing is an integrity error. The integrity error says you did not satisfy the fact that a school year object requires a school. You didn't provide it, so this is no good. I think the way that we can handle that is by adding a school to this form. And the way to do that is by making our form ask for a little bit more data. But how are we going to get that data, you might wonder. We'll see that in a second. So let's change this field list to also include the school. Okay, so now if I come back to this page, and we'll put in the same stuff we had before of April 8th and the 31st. This should still fail, I think, but now it should be a form error rather than an integrity error, because the form that we're going to post, we're not providing the school ID. So we should see this in just a second, and see it says school, this field is required. In order to do this, what I'm going to do in this form is pull the user's school ID, and it's going to be a hidden field. So we can do, there's already a hidden field that's available for us that we can follow suit with. We need to rename this, and we actually want this to be school, not course, because this is not about courses. And the school that's accessible, we're going to access it through that cached property that I used. So we're going to do user, because user is available in the context, and this person's already authenticated. And I know that they'll have a school attribute because that's one of the guarantees that I set in the system. You're not going to be able to you're not going to be able to join this website and not have a school. That's not something that will be possible. So by doing user.school, that will do a query for the school, and then it'll get the ID, and it'll populate that here. We're still not validating that, so we still have that vulnerability where someone could post any school and create any school year they want if they were authenticated. So we need to fix that up later, and that still might require a custom form class, but I'm trying to get to a state where this will successfully complete. So now let's come back, let's refresh this. If we inspect here, we can find that hidden element. So here's our CSRF tag, our token. Here's our school. It has a ID of 25 because I've loaded a bunch of schools into this test database. And so that's our school that we're going to apply, and we should be able to proceed now. So if all goes according to plan, this should fail, but it should fail with a new error message. And that error message will be one that says you haven't provided a success URL. So where do you go when you're actually supposed to be done? That's my guess anyway. Click submit. Yeah, improperly configured. You need to define a couple of things. You can either define a URL, provide a URL, or define get absolute URL on the model. And I don't want an absolute URL on the model. It doesn't make sense in this context to send users to a school year. That's not the goal right now. So what I need to do is define a new location to go to. However, I have created a school year. That was successful. If we come back here, let's bring up the the Django admin and look at I've named it Office in my application, but that's just the name I chose. And come down to the school years. And now we have a second school year for school 25. Start date is April 8th, 2020. So we have clear evidence that that's the one we just created. Don't need it for now, so we're going to delete it. Okay, so our form is starting to take shape. It's got the data that's embedded in there. It needs to, what else does it need? It needs to put errors in place, error messages appropriately in place. And it needs to, what else does it need to do? We still need the protections. We still need tests. There's a bunch of pieces that are still missing, I guess. But we still need a place to go. That's true too. So maybe that's the easiest one to do. Right now, this is pointing nowhere. We don't have the next step. After you create a school year, the next step in the flow is going to be creating grade levels that a student can be a part of. And if you have multiple students, there will ultimately be multiple grade levels. But again, I'm trying to get one thin slice of success for this person. So create the school year, then create a grade level, then create a course for the grade level, and then a task. That's the flow. So we need to send them to the grade level page. Well, let's do that by creating a grade level page. And we will do that as cheaply as we can by copying Shamelessly from other stuff. And for the moment, since I'm not going to be filling out the forms for the grade level, that's going to be a lot of like repetition of what we're doing here. I'm going to use the actual start page again. We've got the start view, and we'll say the name of this thing is going to be start grade level view. And we don't even need to change the template yet. I don't even care about that. But we do need to give this a URL. So we're going to go where the start URLs are defined. And I'm going to take this and change it to grade level. And this will become start grade level. And the name for the URL will be start grade level. Okay. What do we do next? Let's go to the start banner just so we can wire this up properly. And that's this page right here. We want to change this to grade level. So that brings, we refresh this page. Excuse me. This should now click over to grade level, but you can see it's taking us back to the start page template, which is fine. It's just a placeholder. But the important part is we have a destination URL that we're going to. This is actually the start and the grade level are different links. So here's the real start page. That's the appropriate page for all this stuff. Here's the grade level up here. And yeah, it's a place to go to. So the next thing we need to do is define the success URL for this form. And check out the form mixin. So we've got the success URL. I don't remember if success URL has to be like a literal URL or it can be a reverse. So maybe we should check that code. We need to find, this is in edit, and oh, here's the form mixin right here. So success URL is none by default. Stir of self success URL. Okay, so I think it is expected to be like the actual path. Yeah, look at this, because here's where it's used. Here's the form. When the form is valid, the default thing that this form mixin does is a redirect to the success URL. But the success URL is expected to be like an actual path. And that's not going to be correct. So what we need to do instead, in order to use reverse, is what I'm trying to get to, is use the get success URL method. We need to override get success URL. We'll come back here. We're going to go to our school year, and we're going to say def get success URL. And what we want to do is return the reverse on core start grade level. Okay. So if I did that properly, what should happen is you should be moved along to the next step in the path. Let's go try it out. For the peace of mind, I'm going to refresh the school year page. And we're going to say, I'm going to give this a different date this time, just so I know that it's a different one. And we'll give it the same end because that doesn't matter. And we'll say create school year, and if this works appropriately, it should send us to the grade level page. And it doesn't look like it sent us to the grade level page, except that we know that it did, because look at this path at the top. So we have the grade level, and when we refresh, we've got our school year. So we kind of have success. We have what is usually called the happy path. If you do everything right, does it get to the finish line? And in this case, it does. But there's more to do. There's a paragraph of text that needs to be filled in. That's not what we're going to do. Or that's not something I'm going to do today. And then there's this error stuff, and then there's all the tests. But I think that maybe that's a good enough place to stop. I think the fleshing that out is something we can either do in the next stream, or I can pick up or do offline and show you all how I did some of this stuff. So let's think about what we did today. We added a form. We added a create view class to use the form, and we've mocked everything out. This is, while it doesn't look finalized because this Lorem Ipsum text just feels weird, it's getting really close. And I'm feeling pretty good about what's here. The next time on the stream, what I'll do is all of this stuff to fill this in, write the tests, make sure that it does do the proper checking to make sure that you're not being able to submit it from any random user to that form. That might mean making an actual form class. It might mean doing other kinds of validation that I'm not aware of at the moment. We shall see. But I'm going to stop there because I think it's a good place to stop. So I want to thank you for tuning in. I will put this up on YouTube in case you want to see more or miss something or want to review. That should be up online and available. That's all I've got for tonight. If you want to keep up with me, reach me on Twitter. Check me out on Discord below if you got a longer question. Happy to chat with you. Take care.